And now I am delighted to welcome you to our session entitled How to Build and Grow Your Brand in the Time of COVID-19, presented by alumna Sophia Matveeva. Sophia is not a PR person, but an entrepreneur who has used her personal brand to grow her business, raise funding, and make sales. She's the founder of Enty, a retail tech platform that connects consumers, stylists, and brands. The company won App of the Day by Mashable, and Grazia named Enty one of the world's best fashion tech startups. Sophia also runs the Tech For Non-Techies education community. She's contributed to the Financial Times, the Guardian, and Forbes on entrepreneurship and technology, and she's guest lectured at Chicago Booth and London Business School. She's also advised Chicago Booth's New Venture Challenge and the Microsoft by London College of Fashion Incubator. She holds her MBA from Chicago Booth and a bachelor's in politics from Bristol. And so that is certainly enough for me. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Sophia.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm actually a repeat offender of the University of Chicago because I went there for a year abroad when I was at college. So I ended up at the U Chicago College. And I loved it so much because, you know, I'm a massive nerd. I loved it so much. I decided to do a master's there, but I just couldn't decide what. Eventually, I decided that business was what I wanted to do. So I ended up going to business school, which is going to be about my first question, actually. Sam, would you mind just asking our participants, where they studied? And in the meantime, I'm going to get sharing with my screen. Can we tell? Do we have
a few more seconds?
Okay.
Yeah, for the poll to close. All right, here we go. So Sophia, it looks like 35% of our attendees on the line are from Booth. We've got 25% from the college, 33 representing other U Chicago, and then 7% are non-U Chicago alums.
Awesome. I wonder if some of you actually went to school with me, or even worse, if some of you went to frat parties with me. Oh God. I'm sorry for everything. So let's get started. So you already heard all of this. But I'm going to be using mainly examples from what I've done because this is a DIY kind of thing. Like, I'm not going to be telling you about going and getting a PR agency because they're expensive and, in my experience, not always effective. So let's see what we can do ourselves. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is why I am so keen on personal branding. It has honestly helped me a lot. And I think especially in the environment that we're living in today, I mean, I think a lot of us aren't feeling particularly safe about our jobs. We're not feeling particularly safe about our businesses. So you need to have some good stuff about you to help you stand out from the competition. And that's exactly what personal branding does. Essentially, I'm sure many of us do this, you know, when you're going to meet a new person or you get a proposal from somebody, the first thing we do is we get on Google. And if that person that we've just Googled has a bunch of mentions in the press, or they've got a blog with lots of really interesting content, or they've got a podcast, I'll give a listen to that podcast, I'll get to know that person. And then it will tell me, not only do they know their subject area, but also they're the kind of proactive person who in their spare time is going to create all of this stuff. So that says to me, okay, they're a specialist in their field, they have a good network, they're a good communicator, and they're a go-getter. As an employer, I like that. And also, you know, I'm constantly pitching as an entrepreneur for business, for investment, and that's also how I want to come across. So it does help you become better at your job. We'll see why. And also, if we're literally just looking at competition, so imagine, you know, you're going for a job and it's you and two other people, and you've got a podcast, or you've got a blog, or you've got some press mentions. You will not only stand out from the crowd, but it will be quite credible for you to basically ask for more money because essentially you've got more credibility. So credibility is a good thing. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about personal branding as a professional. So there is good news. So I don't know if you can see this 1 out of 10. The 1 out of 10 refers to the fact that more people consume content than produce it. And the figure on Twitter and on most social platforms is that about 10% of the users produce content and everybody else consumes it. And if you actually think about your behavior, so, when you're literally on your phone and you are scrolling through Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, most of the time you are consuming content. So you are scrolling through, maybe you're commenting, maybe you're liking, and much less you're actually posting content. So that means that whilst the place seems very, very busy, and there are definitely some niches that are more busy than others, if you've got something interesting to say, you can still be heard. So more people are consuming, which means that people are happy to consume, right? Few people ever try to become recognized thought leaders, and we'll cover why in a minute. But that's also another encouraging thing, that if you decide to go down this path, which I assume that you have because you're on this webinar in your spare time, apart from Sam, I don't think anybody else is being paid to be here. So you're clearly considering this path, and maybe you're thinking, but it's too competitive, should I even bother? And then that makes you give up before you even start. No, don't be one of those people who doesn't even try. And remember, if you create content, then it's your name that gets shared along with it. So even if one person shares it, that means what? Maybe 5 new people found out your name, and maybe one of those 5 people is going to become a client. Maybe not, but your chances of something good happening gets increased if you get your name out there next to something smart. So I'm giving you lots of good news, but there's bad news. So we talked about this being a DIY session when I'm not telling you to hire PRs. So this basically means you have to do your day job and you have to be good at it. And then you have to do this other thing. So I don't want to lie to you and say that it's going to be easy. What I would say is that I kind of view it like going to the gym or having an exercise routine. It's just one of these things that once you realize that you can't get away with not doing it, you just find time to do it. Find a slot in your diary that's a regular slot that basically you don't make any appointments. I don't know, maybe it's a Friday morning, or don't do it as a Friday afternoon because then you won't do anything, but have a regular slot, just the way when we could go out, we would have a regular slot with an exercise class. Because you have to devote time, energy, and money to your personal brand, as well as being a brilliant lawyer, a brilliant business person, a brilliant professor, whatever you are. So you're taking on a bit more, but it's perfectly doable. But there's also more bad news. But I thought I would sweeten this bad news with having this lovely picture of Kate Moss here, the young Kate Moss. Now, why have I done this? Obviously, she looks fantastic, so that's one reason. But another reason that she got scouted. So she was literally walking through an airport, and a model scout saw her and thought, well, she would be a great model. I want to sign her up for my agency. And now she's rich, famous, dating rock stars and all sorts of other great things. So that's wonderful. What does that have to do with you? Basically, I just wanted to say that while somebody might spot you after you've written in the press, or even after you've been in some really big media, they might spot you and they might send you a request for a proposal. But it is unlikely that you're going to get money directly from creating a personal brand. What I mean is, as Sam mentioned, I've written for the Financial Times, and not just written for the Financial Times. My op-ed was actually on the front page of the Financial Times. Not the whole thing, but a substantial amount of it was on the front page, and also on the homepage of the website. So, this is good. This is really good. And you know what? Richard Branson did not call me, and he did not invite me to Necker Island. So I'm still waiting. Sir Richard, by the way. And I didn't get calls from completely new people basically saying, you sound fantastic, you're very smart, can we have a big contract for you for millions? That did not happen. I did have interesting people reaching out and saying they're interested in my opinions and they would like to meet. And essentially, I've now forged interesting relationships. What it also really helped with is that people who are considering working with me in some way, people who are considering making a deal with me in some way, basically started thinking about me as much more credible and much smarter after I had been very prominent in the Financial Times than, just as another provider. So I don't want you to think that if you have this personal brand, then all you need to do is basically just sit there and then money will just kind of fall on top of your head like a shower. That hasn't happened to me yet, and I've had a lot of press. So Kate Moss got lucky, but we can't count on that for the rest of us. If you're still here, if I haven't completely put you off, because I'm like, you have to do all this free work, there's quite a lot of it, and people aren't just going to give you money for it straight away. So I don't know how many people are still left, but if you're still here, then please answer this question. Sam, you've got the poll. So have you ever felt icky about self-promotion?
Sharing the results now, 90% say yes, they have felt a little icky about self-promotion.
I mean, I felt icky about self-promotion, and I mean, frankly, what am I doing here? So I completely know what you mean, but my friend, I am going to give you some tough love. So the tough love is stop being selfish. So ask yourself, next time you're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to look like if I don't get my point? If I start writing blogs, people are going to think that I'm just this loudmouth person. But you've got knowledge, right? You've got knowledge, you've got something to share. So people have asked you for advice. People have asked you for opinions. People have asked you for help. So if you're sitting there and keeping your knowledge to yourself, there is somebody who needs that knowledge, who doesn't have you on speed dial, who can't ask you. So there are literally people that you're doing a disservice to by not sharing your opinion and your knowledge. So instead of feeling icky, why don't you replace it with this question? Replace it with, okay, can my knowledge help somebody? If it can help somebody, then it should be out there. I mean, provided it's helping them to do something good. So this is really what I wanted to emphasize here, is that it's not about promoting you. It's not about self-promotion. This is not about getting likes on Instagram for a selfie. This is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about promoting your ideas. And in this webinar, I'm going to give you a case study of essentially what I've done. And the thing that I've done, it's helped me, but it has genuinely helped other people go forward and achieve in their careers in a way that I didn't even envisage myself. So remember, when you're having this icky moment, just think about those people that you're not helping by feeling bad about yourself. So why don't you instead feel good about yourself and help other people? That's a good outcome for you and for them. So I'm going to drive the point home because it's important. This, my dear friends, this is not thought leadership. This is something else. This something else also makes a lot of money and gets a lot of press coverage. But this is not thought leadership, whatever you may call it. Being a celebrity is not the same as being a thought leader. Being an Instagram influencer or a TikTok influencer is not the same as being a thought leader, because this is not about sharing your ideas. True thought leadership is a gift. It's a willingness to risk having your ideas shot down because you genuinely believe they can help others. This is from a book by one of my favorite business authors. Her name is Dory Clark. And there's a book that she did called Stand Out. It's a book on personal branding. If you want to delve a bit deeper, you want to get this book, I highly, highly recommend it. It's going to give you a lot of useful information. But just remember that if you've got knowledge, if you've got something that people have asked you about, if people have asked you for your advice and your opinion about something, that means you have this gift. And you letting this ickiness about appearing self-promotional, if you are letting that hold you back, you are not sharing it. So please share your gift. But remember that if you do share your gift, yeah, people will disagree, but so what? If 10 people disagree, but 2 people use it to enhance their career, I would still go with it. I think those odds are still pretty good. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about. So I created a company called Enty. And as Samantha mentioned, Enty is a retail tech platform that I created when I was doing my MBA at Chicago Booth. I'm not remotely a tech person, and yet it's a tech company. So it was very difficult because I had no idea how to create apps, how to work with developers. I didn't know what coders do. I didn't know how to look at code. Like, I didn't know any of it. And somehow through blood, sweat, and tears, I ended up learning how to work with developers and designers and data scientists. And I took lots of courses, and it was a real struggle. And then essentially I learned. And then in the co-working space where we used to work in the days when you could do that, I started just giving talks about what non-technical founders need to know about tech. And first they were free and they were in demand. And then they were so in demand that I thought, well, what happens if I just start charging a little bit? And they were still pretty much in the same demand. And anyway, long story short is that I then created these, I made them into a course. Somebody from London Business School came to see the course and asked me if I would teach it there, so it's now being taught at London Business School. And now now it's basically all online, obviously. So you can go to techfornontechies.co and see that. So there is a course, there's a membership community, and there's a podcast literally called Tech for Non-Techies. I'm going to be giving you some examples from what I've been doing here, because yes, I have written for Forbes and the Financial Times and the Guardian and all this other stuff. But if you're just right at the beginning of your personal brand journey, that is not going to be available to you. But you can do this. Like, you can literally start doing this today. You can set up a website. You can start sharing your knowledge in some kind of community way. You can create a podcast. And you can also do it in combination with your main job. Because I am still running Enty, but I'm also doing this thing. This is why I wanted to show you that it's perfectly possible and essentially how it works and how it benefits you. Okay, so there are 4 pillars of personal branding in general. And we're going to go through them, and we're going to go through how you can use them. Actually, before I continue, do we have any questions? I just want to make sure that you're still alive, you're still listening.
They are alive and listening, and we do have one question from Richard. He says, I'm curious, I've so far created a 15-episode series of blogs and videos, which I have not yet published out of fear. I'm wanting to make a career change. However, I'm afraid that my employer is going to be critical of this and maybe put my tenure at risk. What are your thoughts on that, Sophia?
So they could put your tenure at risk, absolutely. But if you're going to be leaving anyway, maybe it's the shove that you need. And I mean, what else are you going to do? Like, what's the plan here? I think this is the thing that often holds us back, is that we're thinking about, well, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this risky, scary thing only when this other thing happens. And then it kind of never, ever happens. It's like, in my case, I will buy this dress when I'm this size. It never happens. Just buy the dress in a bigger size and relax. Okay, Richard, I'm assuming it's Richard Taylor because I'm assuming that Nobel Prize winners come to my webinars and ask me for career advice. Good, good. Well, Richard, what I would say to you is if you actually want to leave, then isn't this actually just going to hurry the process along? If you think it's good content, then get on with it and see what happens. So, right, 4 pillars of personal branding. Develop your expert niche, create content, get social proof, and grow your network. Now, I would say that one of these has changed significantly during COVID. The others, not so much. In my view, it's this one. We can still grow our networks, and I have grown my network during COVID, but it has just been harder. But that's okay. Some things are harder, other things are easier. I normally live on a plane between London and New York, not particularly pleasant. Right now I'm in the Côte d'Azur, so there are benefits. Then, going around and doing unintentional networking is not a good thing. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, first, let's start with this. Actually, let's start with this. When you are just thinking about what kind of thing you should be creating, you might think that you're not an expert at anything because we're talking about, becoming a recognized expert. And, there I was talking about Richard Taylor. And you're thinking, oh my God, I have to write something. I have to win a Nobel Prize and write several books and just be this person who just knows everything before I can even put anything out there. Or I don't know if I'm going to be good enough. You know what? In general, apart from very few occasions, in general, I hate everything I write. Like, I remember when I used to write for Forbes, like I had a Forbes column for about 3 years. And when I would publish it, I just didn't want to look at it again because I thought it was the most terrible thing ever written. And this happened every week. It was a weekly thing, every week. So it's getting a bit better now, but it's been years. So what I'm saying is that if you're just waiting for this feeling of when it's going to feel good and you're going to feel like you know everything, then you might be waiting forever. So, and the only way you also work out what your niche is and where you like creating content is by actually doing it. But remember that there are two things that you need for your niche to be a successful niche. One is you need to genuinely be interested in it. Because, for example, I don't know, data science, for example, is a very popular niche right now. So data science and fintech, popular niche. Do I care about it? Absolutely not. I'm not going to do anything about it. So if, even though it's popular, if I don't care about it, I'm not going to do this. And that's important. It's important that you're genuinely interested in this particular niche because, as we said, you're also doing your day job. But other people have to be interested in it too. So, for example, I am really, really interested in the economics of platform businesses. And I've written a few things about this, kind of in the more consumer media. And they got hardly any readership. Like my Forbes column, when I was doing it on platforms, literally nobody cared. So that didn't work. So you have, in your expert niche, you have to have your interest matching the audience's interest. And the only way you work that out is by creating content and seeing, okay, this was easy for me to create. This I'm interested in. This is when I'm in a state of flow. And this is also when the audience likes it. And then once you get to that, that's your holy grail. That's brilliant. But you only get to that through trial and error. And remember, you're not going for Nobel Prize winning situations. If you've got one, congratulations. I know this is the University of Chicago, so it's very likely that at least 5 of you have a Nobel Prize. But for the ones of you that don't feel bad about yourself. Just remember that you have to be the best in the context and not in the world. So, not everybody, not every company can afford to have, I don't know, Bill Clinton talking to them about world politics. They're also just going to, there'll be lots of organizations that are very happy to take an associate professor instead. Now, this thing, I just wanted to mention this halo effect thing, in case you think that, I am, 40, and if I become well known for being an expert on this thing, but I have all these other interests, I'm just going to be stuck to this thing forever. Don't worry about it, because there's a thing called the halo effect. And the halo effect basically means that once people think you're smart in general, then so people see you kind of being successful and smart somewhere. When you then move on to another field, they just think, oh, there's the smart, successful person. They're doing this other thing. That means they must be brilliant at it too. So if you become well known and respected in one field, it's much easier to make a transfer and be respected in another field too. Okay, so here are some simple ideas that you can start this today. So I've got 3 examples. These are 2. So what are the top books about your field? Can you do a quick summary? So literally, this is an article I wrote. It is, I think it's a summary of 4 books. It's 4 or 5 books. And you can do that. That's, you don't have to be, again, no Nobel Prize is necessary for this one. Another thing, this is the Tech For Non-Techies thing. I started writing about this Tech For Non-Techies stuff that I was doing, essentially the things that I was teaching. I was teaching how non-technical professionals should work with people who make technology, because there are lots of courses on how to become a developer or how to retrain as a data scientist. But I have no interest in doing that. And I think a lot of business people have no interest in doing that either. Instead, what they want to do is they want to work with technical professionals to co-create things. And there was nothing out there for that. So essentially, I was explaining technology concepts in a very simple way to outsiders. I'm not explaining how things work, how APIs work to developers. Like, that's not my audience. They know much more than that. They don't need me. But I'm explaining it to people who don't know. So see, I'm not claiming to be Steve Jobs. So I'm not saying that I'm absolutely the best, the most knowledgeable person in the world. What I am saying is that I'm an outsider like you, and I can explain it to you. So how would you explain your job to an outsider? Because I'm sure that there are outsiders who would want to understand it for whatever reason. Another thing that I do, this is literally what we did last week. So every month on Tech For Non-Techies, we have a book club. And literally the way I do it is it's every last Tuesday, I select a book, and it's either about a non-technical founder or basically something about technology, which is then going to be comprehensible to non-technical people. And essentially, I read the book, I create learning notes, and then I teach a webinar on the book and on the lessons from the book and how we can apply them. So it's not like a normal book club. The reason why I'm telling you this is you can do this. Like, this does not require you getting press coverage. This does not require you being in the Financial Times. You can get a book about whatever you are doing. You can promote your book club on Meetup, on Eventbrite, on LinkedIn. And then you can set a date, you can do a webinar, and all of a sudden you become the expert in that particular field. You can literally pick a book straight after this webinar and set a date for a month's time and basically start becoming an expert in your field. That way, if you're doing this, you are growing your knowledge and you're growing your audience. So basically, what's not to like? You might have noticed that I've been talking about creating content, and Sam, it would be great if you could just do that last poll that we had on whether people have created thought leadership content.
I'll just give it a few more seconds here. Wonderful. All right, so it looks like overwhelmingly 50% or 56% of our attendees have not yet created thought leadership content, and 34 have.
Thank you. Well, my dears, if you've ever read a book about your actual job, you can literally start creating thought leadership content today. Weekend plans, what's not to like? The reason why I'm saying all of this is that you absolutely have to create content. And I've done a version of this session several times, and there is always somebody who asks me, but do I have to? Can't I just get called by journalists and be asked about my opinion? You know what? If you're Richard Branson, yes, you can. But unless you are a billionaire businessman with rockets up in space, it's going to be harder. So unless those things apply to you, which they might, unless they do, you can't get around it. Sorry. I would view content creation as professional development. So don't focus on getting lots and lots of people to read your stuff, but just focus on becoming a better content creator, about learning about your field, about expanding your network. Make sure that your content can be used by people to enhance their careers and their lives. So look at the session that I'm giving you. Right now, I'm not just saying to you, oh, personal branding is a good thing, and look, I've done this and I've done that. I'm saying to you, I have done this, this is what works, this is what you should do, this is what's easy, and this is what's not easy. So literally make sure in your thought leadership content, when you are practicing on your expert niche, basically give people some information, so give people some context, and then tell them what they can do. So look at what I've done today is I've told you why personal branding is a good thing. I've told you the stuff that it can get you, which is basically put you ahead of the competition. But I also told you what it can't get you, which is you publish an article and immediately you get a big contract. And then I'm telling you about, okay, if this is what you want, there are 4 things you need to do, 4 pillars, okay? So that's accessible and actionable. There are different ways that you can create content. I've tried all of these. I like some more than I like others, but I've never tried an infographic because that's just not my thing. I like it when other people make them. I like looking at them, but I just don't think I'm going to enjoy making them. But some people enjoy making them. Maybe that's your thing. But the only way you find out the kind of content that you're good at making is if you do it. So start creating something and then make sure that you haven't just put it out there and just thought, okay, it is now published, people are going to read it. No, after you publish it, whether it's a podcast or a SlideShare or a Medium article or a LinkedIn article, then make sure that you post it on your social media, so on your LinkedIn, on your Facebook, on your Twitter. Also, make sure that you send it to the people who you want to impress. And it's perfectly okay to just do, maybe a weekly or a monthly update. Send them some of your content. I mean, give them an opportunity to unsubscribe, but it's perfectly feasible to do that. So people ask me about Medium. Some of you might not know what Medium is. Medium is basically a media publication where you can publish your own blogs. It started in California, and so it started in Silicon Valley. So it has a lot of business, technology, and investing content. So especially like crypto and all of that. But I'm totally not into crypto, but technology, investing, business, it's really good for that. LinkedIn, you all know. Sam, I can see that we've got a few questions. Can we take 1 or 2?
We do, yeah. Let's see if we're picking 1 or 2. Here's we'll do one about creating your niche, maybe, and then we could do one about creating content. So Here's a great question. I've managed to develop my expertise in two different unrelated areas. One is my passion, the other pays the bills. If I create content and build a niche centered around a personal brand on what I'm passionate about, will I hurt my chances of being seen as employable in the other area?
Oh, definitely not. 100% not. I mean, unless it's something hugely illegal in most countries around the world, then I wouldn't. Um, but unless it's that, I actually think it enhances you. So I'll give you an example. I have a marketing coach and she is wonderful. And one of the things that actually drew me to her, I was interviewing a few people, and this woman is not cheap. But the thing that made her stand out to me is that she is also a professional salsa dancer. So I interviewed her, I read her work, she came highly recommended, but so did a few other people. And she was actually on the more expensive end. And you know what I did? I also looked on her YouTube videos where she is in fabulous outfits, dancing, and just it's all glitter and big hair, and she's winning dancing competitions. And she's just living life. Like this woman is she just has life bursting out of her. And I thought, that is the kind of person that I want around me. Like I just want that. And the fact that she's a pro dancer does not detract from the fact that she's also a brilliant professional marketer, but also the fact that she just has this interest and she's so full of interesting things actually massively draws me to her. So I would say that it's a plus. And for the people for whom it's a minus, do you really want to work with them anyway? I mean, what kind of boring people are they? Like, no. Sam, I know you've got a question about creating content. I just want to have another slide on creating content because maybe it'll answer your question. Yeah, we've got a couple more. Basically, when you're thinking about creating content, this is what I would think about here. You know how I just told you I have a coach. So one of the reasons why I have a coach for marketing is she helps me with the consistency. Because, I've done all of this stuff, but also I'm not superhuman and I don't have magical willpower and I get lazy and like Netflix as much as everybody else. But yet I run two businesses and somehow it all works. So what you need to do is you need to have consistency. In order to have consistency, just like going to the gym, you need to have some kind of target. So, maybe you're working out 3 or 4 times a week. So maybe you're creating one piece of content. So maybe it's one podcast per week. Maybe it's one blog article per week. You know that it has to come out. You know it has to come out on a Friday. So the Tech For Non-Techies podcast comes out every Wednesday morning. And there have been times when I've left it literally until Tuesday night, but I am doing it. Like now it has an audience, I have to get it out. So make sure that you're consistent, because having something coming out every week is better than you just having a massive frenzy, creating lots of stuff and then not doing anything else for the year. It's the same as going to the gym. If you go to the gym for 8 hours and you kill yourself working out, it doesn't mean that you can then just sit on your butt and not do anything for the rest of the year. This is where having a coach is helpful, or basically just block out that time in your diary, but just do it. Another thing is, don't get discouraged when nobody's reading your blog or nobody's listening to your podcast. It's fine. It happens to everybody at the beginning, and it's just part of the journey. So I wrote this article on Forbes. You can literally just Google it. I was going to say right now. No, right now, listen to me. But in 20 minutes, Google this, and you will get all the reasons why writing content is useful, even if nobody reads it. We'll go through some of these reasons, but essentially, creating content is professional development. You get to learn about your field, you get to meet interesting people when you're interviewing them, and you get to become a better marketer because you're then promoting your content. You learn about digital media, and you learn how to create content. So you become a podcaster, you become a writer. I actually know somebody who was working in a big fashion company, and she wasn't very happy about kind of her work environment. And she also had a podcast on the side. And she then used her podcast to essentially get a much bigger, better paid job in another fashion company. And one of the reasons why they loved her is because she knew how podcasts worked and how to make them. So this is your investment, especially for people who went to Chicago Booth. Like, we've got MBAs. We spent so much money and time in our professional development writing a few blogs or having a weekly podcast. It is not the same as paying $180,000 for your MBA. Like, it's way easier. So if you did that, do this. Okay, now let's talk about vegan condoms. Were you expecting this? Bet you weren't. Right. Okay. So the reason why I'm talking to you about vegan condoms is not because I'm a vegan. It is because of this article right here. So this was a few years ago. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. Some ladies who run a company called Hanks. It is a vegan condom company in London. I know them, and they basically asked to interview me for their newsletter. And their newsletter, every week they're interviewing some kind of women in business. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And the reason why is that I know that their clientele are quite wealthy. They've essentially got a luxury brand as a kind of Whole Foods type brand. So it's a luxury brand that mostly appeals to women. Now, the product at Enty, that's a digital product. Essentially, it's an app, but it's also aimed at women who are fairly well-to-do. So I knew that if I'm giving my opinions, sharing a bit of my knowledge to the women who are reading this newsletter, they might become customers, or they might eventually become customers of Enty. But also what I was doing that is I was practicing my interview skills, because if I completely messed up the interview here, it would have been, a shame, it's still online, but it wouldn't have been absolutely terrible. So what I'm saying to you is that right at the beginning, it's very unlikely that a big newspaper or a big publication is going to be interested in you. This is true for print media, and it's even more true for television. Like, TV in general won't even touch you unless they've seen a reel. So what you need to do is you need to start practicing. So practice by writing for company blogs, giving interviews to newsletters, giving interviews to your local publications. If it's a vegan condom brand, go for it. Eventually, as you can see, this got me into the Financial Times, where my op-ed was literally on the homepage. So, but this, there was a jump to this. There was a lot of practicing here before I managed to get here. So there are lots of local blogs, and there are lots of small podcasts, and you can literally pitch to them. Once you know what your expert niche is, you've got a few articles on Medium, then you start pitching yourself to local blogs and podcasts and practice your interview skills. Okay, so building your network is the third pillar. Building your network in the time of COVID, I think, is the hardest thing. But I think the way we network now is actually a good skill to learn for further down the line. Because there is intentional and unintentional networking. Before COVID, I think most of us were doing unintentional networking. Unintentional networking is you turn up to a conference or like a business school alumni event, and you grab a glass of wine and you kind of just stand there talking to anybody who talks to you and hoping that there's going to be an interesting conversation, or hoping that something good will happen. Intentional networking is knowing whom you want to meet, why you want to meet them. So do you want a job? Do you want a side hustle? Do you want a contract? Do you want an investor? Do you want a mentor? Do you not know what you want, but are you looking for some inspiration? Maybe you're looking for somebody who is doing something cool that you could learn from them. And when you meet that person, what do you want them to know about you? Are you an accountant who's also a salsa dancer? I mean, I would much rather hire an accountant who is also a salsa dancer than an accountant who, is also an accountant. So what interesting things are there around you? And so once you figured this out, you're like, okay, but I'm still sitting at home. What am I going to do? So I'm going to give you a secret. So I do this and it works. So you can literally see the results I've had if you just go on the Tech For Non-Techies podcast, or if you just go on techfornontechies.co, and there's an events tab, and you will see the kinds of people that I've had come to my masterclasses and which become the podcast. So I literally reach out to interesting people who are doing something interesting in technology. I say to them, I've got this podcast and I've got this network. Will you come and give me an interview? Will you teach a masterclass? In general, a lot of people say yes. So I have expanded my network to some incredible people. So one of them teaches AI at Harvard Business School, so brilliant. There've been a couple of people who've written best-selling business books. There are some really incredible entrepreneurs who, frankly, I wouldn't have really met. Like, they would have been harder to reach out to. Like, I'm not sure if they would have just wanted to hang out because they don't have the time. They're like me, they're running businesses, and just unless we're friends already, just getting their advice would have been really difficult. So if you're already creating content and you've got your expert niche, and there are people that you want to reach out to, either because they can help grow your career or because they're just really good at your hobby. So the person who asked about their hobby, I don't know, if your hobby is painting, then why don't you reach out to wonderful painters for a podcast that you have? And then that way you get to develop your hobby and develop your knowledge and do something really interesting and grow your network. So I do this, it works. And I would say, in terms of COVID networking, this is the best thing for it, because like right now we're all together, we're at an event, but is this networking? It is not networking. It's useful, but it's not networking. Okay, so remember though that a strong brand opens the door, but it's up to you what happens when you walk through it. So what I mean is, again, we're going back to what we said earlier, that when you apply for something, or when you're going to be interviewed for a job or a promotion or a deal, you're going to get Googled. People will search for you on Google. People will have a look at you on social media. If you've got some interesting content that you have created, or you have been in other companies' publications talking about your expert niche, then you're going to essentially be an expert, and you're going to be viewed as more impressive. But that means that you are more likely to get the interview, and that means that the interviewer is going to be better dispositioned towards you when you walk through the door. However, if you walk into the interview and you're not prepared, you're still not going to get the job. So this is what I mean. A strong personal brand opens the door, but you still have to do the job really well. Like, it's more likely that you'll get the contract, but you still have to do the pitch. And once you get the contract, you still have to do the work. So what I'm saying is that, for the people who are listening to this, clearly you are ambitious people, clearly you're not afraid of work. So I would say that a strong personal brand is something that helps you to achieve your aims, and it's an amplifier, but it doesn't replace actual work. So sorry. But it does mean that you can get paid more, which is a good thing. So what do you do with your personal brand once you have it? So remember that winning a beauty contest doesn't mean that a billionaire will ask to marry you. Those are my words of wisdom to you. So basically it just means, again, let's go back to that FT example. Literally, when my article, by the way, it was not the only time that I've written for the Financial Times. It was just the best time because it was the biggest article in the most prominent place. But And it was also the first time. So I was ecstatic. I thought, okay, who else has written for the Financial Times? Like Barack Obama and like world elite. So there I am, like feeling very important. And, you know, yes, some people did reach out, as I said, but it wasn't like this magical moment when just the world changed. No. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that once something happens, once you are profiled in the big press, once your blog is really well read, once you have a lot of listeners on your podcast, make sure that people know about it. Make sure that it's not just on your social media. I mean, that should just be obvious. Make sure that it's on every application that you're doing. So if you're applying for a job, it's on there. It's on your resume. If you are doing an application for grant funding, it's on there. Also, put it at the end of your email, in your email signature. Like everybody needs to know this about you, because once you get it, this is a good thing. I know people who literally they literally had an article about them somewhere, I don't know, like the New York Times 10 years ago, and they're still saying as seen in the New York Times. Because once it happens, you can basically say it forever. So, but just make sure that you say it. Don't just think that, oh, everybody would have seen it. No, you've got to make sure that people see it, and then you can get the benefit. Okay, so if you want more of this, my friends, I am offering some one-on-one coaching on personal branding. Sam's going to send you some details about this, but essentially I am only doing this for 3 people. Because I've already got quite a lot on. And if you want me to coach you, help you find your expert niche, and help you basically get your first, let's say, 3-month strategy in order about how to grow your personal brand, then get in touch. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and answer your questions.
Wonderful. This was a great presentation, and we have a few questions coming in. If there's any more, please do submit them. And we have a few on the same topic, so I'm going to kind of mash them together. So you've talked about a lot of different types of content here: blogging, vlogging, articles, books, podcasts, etc. Do you weigh any of those as more important than others? Is there maybe a strategy to how you pick what kind of content you share with the world?
So there are 2 different types, broadly speaking. So there is the stuff that you create and other people. So if we just talk about other people, so other companies, then basically the bigger the brand, the better. So but then also even within that there are qualifiers. So for example, the Daily Mail has more readers, but the Financial Times readers are more influential. So what are you saying here? Are you talking about venture capital investment? Then you want to be in the Financial Times. Or are you talking about the latest lifestyle brand that you're the founder of? Then the Daily Mail is going to be much better. So that's for other publications, but essentially big brands, respectability, like that really matters. When we're talking about content that you create, I weigh the things that are good quality. And that basically means that what are you capable of making? Which one of those media are you capable of being your best at? So some people are really good at vlogging. I personally think like it takes ages. So for example, on Tech For Non-Techies, we do have a YouTube channel, but essentially we just put up clips of events that we already have. Like I don't do vlogs. I can't be bothered. But I like writing. I really enjoy writing, even though I have to like cringe every time I press publish. But I enjoy this process. I don't know if any of you are therapists, like tell me why. I also enjoy podcasts, so I enjoy making it. So I would say figure out what you generally enjoy doing, because what's more important is that the thing that you create is done well and is done consistently. So if you don't enjoy doing it, then you're not going to do it consistently. So I hope that helps.
That's great. Thank you. And here's a question on developing your niche, or maybe more importantly, figuring out what your niche is. This attendee says, I have too wide of interests, too many interests. How do I pick the one that will become my niche?
Well, you know what? I would just say you've got to start somewhere. So, like, pick, pick. So first of all, pick one that you've been asked about, because you might be deeply interested in kind of the making of pink pens. But if you're the only person in the world who's so deeply interested in the making of pink pens, you're not going to get very far. So in general, I think I'd say that we all have, we kind of, it's like the balance of what do we have. So there's your interest on one side, and then what do people want, and you've got to match the two. So I'd think about, what do people ask you about? What do people get your advice on most frequently? If it's still fairly wide, then like there'll still be like 3 or 5 different aspects. If you don't know, if you can't think what people think, if you can't think of what advice people ask you for, literally ask your friends, like write to them saying, okay, I want to do this thing. I'm trying to work out what my expert niche is. What do you like? What do you think? I'm like, if you had questions about something, what would you ask me? And don't be shy about this, because my friends ask me about this kind of stuff all the time. I ask them, like, I've participated in like coaching 360 feedbacks for my friends. It's fine. Like, we all do this now. It's a thing. Don't worry about it. So ask your friends. But essentially, you've got to marry your interests and other people's interests. And once you get that, it's holy grail. Okay, last question. Do you have more?
That is a great idea. I think that we probably are around at time. So I've just dropped in the chat the link that Sophia shared to contact her. I will also share it in an email after this event here. Sophia, I want to thank you so much for participating, for sharing really actionable tips on this fun and important topic.